All right, on this episode of Bouts Talking Bouts, happy to be talking to an individual who's been a veteran of the pro wrestling scene for a fair while. Catch him on AEW nowadays, and a member of the Pinnacle, prominent character there. And happy to be talking to Shawn Spears and welcome him on the show for the very first time. How's your day going so far there, Shawn?
It's going well, man. Appreciate you having me, taking some time, and chat a little bit of wrestling. Things are going well. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Appreciate you asking and everything like that. I mean, at the time of this recording, the whole thing with Sean Dean with Wardlow coming through and messing everything up, so that must be a little bit of a recent kind of thing there, maybe still smarting a little bit there, but hopefully that security can eventually contain Wardlow there.
Wardlow is making his own bed. He's going to have to sleep in it at some point. So, life decisions, Wardlow. Life decisions.
No, but you mentioned off the top talking about wrestling, and I'm very excited to get into a number of topics for sure. Like, I think it's cool, like your connection with Eric Young, just like getting taught by him early on, and just some of the subsequent matches you were able to have with him, like both on the independent scene in Ontario and also NXT and stuff like that. There, can you kind of talk about the relationship over the years with Eric Young?
Yeah, he's been an integral part of my career, a very good friend of mine, even to this day. Very fortunate to meet him early on, because the first place I tried to go to for training, it really didn't have a set structure. I kind of got conned, so to speak, gave up a lot of money, young, ambitious, didn't exactly do the homework that I should have done, and, I made the mistake of paying before knowing for sure. But what it did was it allowed me to move to Cambridge, Ontario, and that's where I ended up meeting Eric Young. So he knew my tale, he knew what the situation I was in, and he offered to help. And with the school that he had at the time, he offered basically hands-on training. So he was in the ring with me, which to this day, the school that I run with Tyler Breeze, Flatbacks, we're in the ring with you. I believe in that kind of training, hands-on. Just fundamentally, it helps the student kind of grasp onto things a little quicker, a little sooner, and it's easier to adapt. But his kind of training, his style of training is the style that I continue with and believe in to this day. He really set a good representation of this industry. Always be professional, always treat people well. Contacts is everything. The same people you meet on the way up are the same people you meet on the way back down. That kind of thing. So his training was massively valuable to any success that I've had.
Well, the confluence of those two things, just like the first experience where it doesn't necessarily work out and then you end up going to a great wrestling school. I imagine both of those things inform your methodology at Flatback's wrestling school a fair bit, just really wanting to do right by driven young talent and then letting them know the proper, methodology to do so.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in being trained by somebody who has done something in this industry. Especially if I'm a young hockey player and Austin Matthews opens up a wrestling school, or John Tavares opens up a wrestling school. Of course, I'm going Canadian, but I can watch this guy on TV and I can go be trained by him at the same time. Well, clearly he's doing something right, because A, he's on TV, and B, he's been around for quite some time. Resumes speak volumes. We're not a cash grab. We believe in forwarding the business. I believe in giving back to the business that has given me so much. So I am very, I kind of don't pull any punches. I believe in you're going to get out of this what you put in, and I'm here to teach if you're here to learn. So that's the kind of the mentality that we have in Flatbacks, and our goal is to teach them the very basic fundamentals in order to begin a career in professional wrestling and do it the right, safe, and proper way. So, yeah, that all stems from a lot of my learnings under Eric Young.
Yeah, I love hearing that, and I'm sure invaluable information given out in that space. But I've really wanted to ask you about this for a while now and see if you have any recollections of this, because I went to a show many years ago in Oshawa at the Neb's Fun World there, and you were wrestling on that show and everything like that. Like, what are your recollections, if you have any at all, of wrestling that March 2006 show at Neb's Fun World, because me and my brother Zach still talk about that a fair bit.
I'm trying to remember Neb's Fun World. I wrestled a lot in Oshawa.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember a Fun World. Was there like a steel cage match on that show or something?
I think on the show they had like a Strangler number 1, Strangler number 2 kind of character as well. You wrestled Cody Deaner on the show.
Yeah, that goes back a long way, and I get hit in the head a lot for a living. Yeah, I don't remember that show, and specifically, and if that offends anybody, I deeply apologize. But I had a great time wrestling throughout all of Ontario. I'm a little out of touch now with what's going on in terms of the independent scene in Ontario. Obviously, COVID not only really disrupted how life in the world works, but it took its toll definitely in Canada, and specifically as well as in Ontario in terms of independent promotions. I think now things are just kind of starting to reboot and kind of get off the ground. But I hope that scene is as thriving as it was before. I remember I was working almost every weekend, 2 or 3 times a weekend, and it would be all over, sometimes 2 shows within a day. But what a wonderful time. And the Schwa, yeah, the Schwa has some good crowds back in the day, man. Are they still rowdy or what?
Oh, yeah, well, I used to be at a lot of those, like, Oshawa Legion Hall shows. That seemed to be, like, a regular place GCW would go to, and seemed like you were on a fair bit of those shows. So, yeah, it was a staple for me.
Nice, yeah, okay. So, yeah, I remember the GCW and the Legion shows up in that area, too. Always had a good time. Always had a good time. Not a funny story, but since you brought him up earlier, the only time Eric Young and I had ever wrestled on an independent match, I believe, was in Oshawa, and it was at one of the Legion shows, and it was in a very bad ring. The ring was very dodgy, not very well-structured at all. And early on in the match, Eric Young stepped in kind of like a pothole almost in the ring and ended up snapping his ankle. He broke his ankle in the match.
Oh, geez.
And I remember being really excited because we were both amped up for it because we had never worked each other. It was teacher versus student kind of thing. And we were really excited about it, and that happens. And he was out for a little while, but it was weird. I always had this odd feeling that at some point or another, we're going to wrestle each other again, but it's going to be in a bigger atmosphere. I just always had that feeling. I just had no idea when and where that would be. And luckily, we ended up getting to cap that off. But, yeah, and that's one thing I remember from back in the Oshawa days was that unfortunate incident.
Yeah, because I'd seen you guys had wrestled. I didn't necessarily... That was one of the shows I wasn't at. I didn't necessarily know there was, like, the injury kind of component. So, I mean, that sucks in, like, a localized kind of way. But, I mean, you guys ended up wrestling later on in big matches. So, cool story for sure. But, yeah, I'm kind of, wondering about the recent photo I saw you tweet a little bit ago of Minoru Suzuki with the Ring of Honor gold. I'm kind of wondering, is that, like, a fan of pro wrestling, like, excitement-minded sort of thing, or are you maybe eyeballing the Ring of Honor TV title with the whole Forbidden Door dynamic and all?
It's a little bit of everything. It's just so he's one of my favorite Japanese wrestlers. I remember when I did a little stint in All Japan Pro Wrestling. He was in All Japan at the time too, but I wasn't very new to the industry, but I was fairly new, and I was especially pretty new to Japan. And I remember going over there, and during the day, some of the young guys or young boys would go in and roll around with some of the Japanese veterans. And I was told, because I was a new guy over there, hey, don't get in the ring with that guy. And they pointed at Suzuki. If he goes in the ring, don't get in there. I'm like, well, damn it. Like, I like that guy. But of course, I'm going to listen to what I'm being told in Japan because they're obviously telling me things for a reason. But, and plus he's legit. He's about as legit as they possibly get. I don't need to tell you his history.
Yeah.
But always excited to watch. A very unique character, a believable character. I love everything about the guy. And when he started doing, American shows, or he's doing the American tour and stuff like that, of course, he's on everybody's list of to work with. Who wouldn't want to work with a guy like that? He came over to AEW, did some work with Bryan Danielson. Incredible match, which, of course, you would expect. And then, shows up at Ring of Honor and immediately walks in and wins a title. I mean, with the whole Forbidden Door thing, the exciting part is that anything can happen. We're in a day and age now, for the most part, where these dream matches that fans have talked about for years, and I'm talking the hardcore fan base, which is essentially the AEW fan base. These matches that they have dreamt about for years are now a possibility. And as a wrestling fan myself, who's been around for 20 plus years in it, that's exciting for me. So, pencil aside or booking aside or any plans that already may be in the mix that I'm obviously not included in, I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to see if it, gets any ripples in the water. I'm going to shoot my shot, because this day and age, like, this wasn't available 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years, obviously. And who knows when that door could slam shut. And then, so while it's here, while it's happening now, this is a beautiful time for professional wrestling fans, workers, promoters, everybody, because we can actually give the audience everything that they're hopefully looking to see.
Yeah, and I just figured it kind of went together on a few different levels, because, it's been a little bit, but you'd had a past Ring of Honor match there, so a certain level of familiarity in that canon there, and I find, like, in a lot of the interviews that I'd seen on you doing my homework, it seemed like a Ring of Honor, or rather a TV title, or like an Intercontinental sort of title, like you really saw yourself as someone who could, like, really hold hardware like that and really, like, make a big run with that. So I guess that's why I thought to kind of pose the question the way I did.
Yeah, I grew up on those guys. I grew up on the Rick Rudes, the Rick Martells, the Mr. Perfects. You know what I mean? Like, those are the guys that really inspired me within this industry. I'm not an idiot. I don't have any false sense of accomplishments or goal setting. Like, yeah, that's the TNT Championship. That's right up my alley. A Ring of Honor Television Championship is right up my alley. The United States Championship, right up my alley. The Intercontinental Championship. Those things are in my wheelhouse. I am that performer. Those are when I idolized Brett growing up and Michaels growing up. Like, they were the Intercontinental Champion. And, the Intercontinental Champion over time that was the stepping stone from being kind of in the upper mid-card, stepping into the main event. That was usually the history that went along with that championship. So, all those things combined, I just, that was the most appealing to me. Those titles meant the workhorses. Those titles meant that these are the guys that were going to carry a boatload of the work in the promotion that they were in. I feel like over my 20 years, I have done that. I have done my job very well, very reliable. I can cut time and I can create time. I just, that's my wheelhouse. So, yeah. Those are the titles, just like you. I grew up on that kind of stuff, man. So to me, that kind of stuff is exciting, especially now being involved and being around most of it.
Yeah, and just some of the names you mentioned there, talking about a guy like Brett, like with the love for, obviously a great performer, but the Canadian connectivity there. Like when I posted that, tweet, it seemed like a lot of people from like Niagara region were kind of reaching out and just, enjoying seeing like their guy, their representative out there. Do you ever think about things in those kind of terms? I imagine something like that would give you a great level of esteem and pride, I would think.
About having like some people from the Niagara area kind of comment or something like that, or kind of, I see a few comments. For the most part, I spend some time on Twitter. I don't spend a great deal of time, probably not as much time as I should, in terms of promoting and things like that. But it's always good to have that hometown love, so to speak, because I have the exact same. For them, I remember where I cut my teeth. I cut my teeth in that scene, and luckily I was able to go on and do some pretty big things, more than I could have possibly ever imagined. So I know that when I come back to the area, and whether it's a signing or whether we did an NXT show in St. Catharines, they ran at an event in downtown St. Catharines, and wrestling fans in true form showed up, and they showed me a great deal of love, and it was fully reciprocated. And it's something, they gave me a moment that I'll never forget, and it's something that I kind of carry with me to this day. It's still somewhat surreal that some people still feel that way, but I guess that keeps me kind of level-headed. I guess that keeps me kind of pushing forward and grinding forward in a way. But I mean, it's very nice to know that 20 plus years is appreciated. So that means the world to me, and I'm glad it means something to somebody else as well.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned a bit before, you should probably use Twitter more than you do. I feel like you use it pretty effectively, though. Like when I saw that guy tweet at you and he was like, oh, does TK have plans to bring AEW north of the border? Just a very succinct retweet. You're like, yes. And I've been wondering about that for a little while, too, there. So I imagine something like that would be on the, proverbial bucket list in a sense, just getting to perform under the AEW banner in your home country there.
Yeah, well, no, of course. Of course. If it was up to TK, we'd be everywhere and everywhere by now. You know what I mean? But you have to remember, we're still a fairly new company. We're coming up on 3 years. And in 3 years, we've already accomplished so much in such a short amount of time. And Tony has big ideas and big aspirations to take AEW even broader. But of course, with COVID and things slowly starting to fully open up, we kind of had to wait and bide our time like many, many others around the world. So there are plans. There are things in the works. I'm not fully detailed, so it's not like I'm holding back information. That kind of stuff is above my pay grade. So therefore, I know it's going to happen. I've been told it's going to happen. I just don't have any other details other than that. If I did, I would tell all my Canadian folk that I'd give them all the spoilers that I possibly could. But it is going to happen. AEW is just, we're growing, and we plan to grow more. And yeah, sooner rather than later, we're going to be in my native land. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of seems like an inevitability at this point here. But yeah, I did mention before a lot of the Twitter engagement, and I thought this one was kind of funny from Eduardo Salomon there. He was saying, when is, Shawn Spears going to fight the original chairman, La Parka? Is there any thought on taking on La Parka? Maybe see him, come through or something like that, get involved in some kind of capacity, put the stamp on the fact you're the sole chairman out there?
I mean, that would be up to the powers that be. He knows where I am. I have no idea where he is, but he knows where I am. And if it's a matter of he wants the chairman versus the chairman, I mean, if that's going to create a number, if there's a spot for that on Dynamite or somewhere else, then I have no doubts that the powers that be will make that happen. I'm an open book. I'm up for whenever and wherever. It doesn't matter to me. So if TK signs off on it, I'm sure he can make anything happen. But as far as I'm concerned, there's only one chairman, man. If you ask anybody in Canada, they'll agree with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, for sure. But I was also hearing some other interviews, and I thought it was interesting the way you look at, like, how wrestlers, convey what they're doing nowadays. Like, in the sense, it's not so much about, oh, this person has, like, a multitude of, like, different gimmicks they're going through, but just instead, it's like there's that core, wrestler at the nucleus of it, and it's just, I guess, different permutations of the same character. Like, I think you gave the example of, like, Chris Jericho, where it's like, oh, he's the Painmaker, he's the influencer, but it's still Chris Jericho at the end of the day. Do you think, like, that's going to be the predominant kind of storytelling style going forward? Is the idea of a gimmick almost antiquated in a certain sense? Like, what are your thoughts on all of that?
I feel that the days of a gimmick, a one and only sole gimmick, is, in my opinion, it's gone, or it's fading very quickly. I believe that there are layers to a character, just like in a movie, just like in just like in a movie, more or less. There's different sides to everybody's personality. So in real life, Ronnie's quite quiet. He likes to kind of keep to himself. He likes to kind of play video games. He spends time with his dogs. If I asked you, if you said, hey, tell me something, exciting about your real life, it would take me a minute, because I've worked so hard that I've earned the right to relax in my real life. But in the world of professional wrestling or entertainment, I get to be whatever I want. And I get to show you different sides of my personality, whether it be comedic or over the top, or, what I feel is angry, or what I feel is embarrassed or shy. Like, there's nothing I will not do in the world of entertainment. I am very comfortable being in front of thousands and being the butt of the joke. That to me is entertainment. But that's just me digging through different layers of my personality, so I can one week have a glove, and I can next week be swinging a chair, and then the next week I can be wearing, a full-on suit with no T-shirt and a beanie, and I can be somebody's cheerleader, and then at the same time, I can take someone's head off with a chair, and I can cut a scathing promo where you go, oh, okay, wow. All right, I got to see that match. Or I can be a goof, and I can stumble over my words, and everybody can laugh at me. Like, it's just, that's the beautiful thing of entertainment. And I feel that a lot of the wrestlers that have had longevity or long-term success or have been able to reinvent themselves, and Jericho is a wonderful example, they have been able to tap into a multitude of their different personalities to where they go, I'm just going to bring this to light. And if anybody's been following them over the course of X amount of years, they go, that's cool, that's different, that's unique. And a lot of the times it's as simple as changing a hairstyle. It's as simple as changing a look, wearing gloves, having a Painmaker catchphrase, or the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla, or it's just layers to a personality. So I think the days of that's a gimmick, he needs a new gimmick, I think those days are kind of done. If anything, it's about reinventing yourself, and I believe the people who have done that best have done that by exploring different sides of their personalities.
Yeah, and something you've very much honed over the course of your own individual experience and journey, but I imagine bolstered too by getting to be under the proverbial learning tree with guys like Tully Blanchard and stuff like that. Like, not as much in the picture in an on-screen kind of capacity, but I mean, I imagine invaluable insights from a guy like that.
Yeah, it's not just Tully. Tully's offered a ton of invaluable information, but it's also guys like Chris and now that, you know, CM Punk is back and stuff like that. Like, I see the comparison a lot. Like, one thing I do see quite often is some people will say on Twitter that, oh, he left WWE to go to AEW to be in the same spot. Okay, well, to me that just says you're not paying attention, or you're not watching, or you're not seeing any kind of evolution throughout that time frame. I came to AEW, and you know, I get paired with Tully Blanchard, and then I get into a feud with Chris Jericho's crew, and I'm in the Pinnacle with Max and the greatest tag team on the planet, FTR, and you know, we're doing the Stadium Stampedes, and we're doing the Blood and Guts, and then I'm wrestling Jericho in a singles match, and I'm doing all these different things that I would never have gotten to do anywhere else. And through those things, I'm getting so much knowledge. I'm getting to see how things are pieced together, and how long we're looking down the pipeline in terms of, here's where we're starting, this is where we're going, this is how we're piecing things together. And all these things, all these attributes that I get to learn from all these different guys all around me, I get to kind of pull in, I get to kind of sift through on my own and find out what works best for me. But not only that, I get to bring it back to the students I get to teach on a weekly basis. You know what I mean? Whether or not they're ready for that kind of information yet is a different story, but I at least get to pass that down that, all right, yeah, I may not have headlined any manias, or I may not have been a world champion anywhere, but I've wrestled them, and I've talked to them, and I've asked them questions, and they've taught me. So I'm still able to keep that information circulating as much as I can to hopefully benefit the next generation of wrestlers coming up. So, I mean, information in this industry is key. That's one thing, but how you retain that information and then utilize it in order to at least, you know, enhance your performance or the rest or anybody else coming up after you is vital. So you're right in every sense of the word, just second to none knowledge being passed around, especially in AEW.
Yeah, and to that point about like people having certain things to say where it's like, okay, you're probably not watching the show. It seems like the people that are watching the show, as much as they're looking at this like Wardlow MJF kind of feud as like that would be the, I guess, the direction it would be going. And it seems like a lot of people are very caught up in the accountability, you know, progression and stuff like that. And I've seen some people who are like, yeah, I'm almost like several degrees of magnitude more excited to see Wardlow get at it with Shawn Spears than even the MJF kind of feud there. So it just really shows the, I guess, nuance in storytelling with the Pinnacle and by proxy AEW that I imagine would be very stimulating for you as a performer.
I'm having a blast. So that's, you know, if I step back and look at things from, you know, in the totality of things, I'm having a time of my life. Oh, I love some of the long, because we do a lot of long-term storytelling, and that for me is what's exciting to sink my teeth into. I feel I perform the very best within a story, whether I'm in a starring role or in a supporting cast role. And with the Pinnacle and everything that we have done with the Inner Circle, and then what we've done with CM Punk, and now what we're doing with Wardlow, I've been in the supporting role. But that has been so unique and so excited because I know where we're going. And literally week to week, we're getting more ideas, and we're throwing this into, and we're changing a couple kind of things up. But for the most part, everybody's on the same page. And the beautiful thing about long-term storytelling is that the audience has been letting us know that we are on the right track. Like, that's one thing. It's one thing to have ideas, but once we actually execute these ideas, to see the live feedback, the live reaction, which is the ultimate confirmation on whether or not you're doing something right or wrong. That's the beautiful thing of what we do. If you go back and watch Dynamite this past week, when Wardlow came through that curtain and you hear the reaction, like, yeah, wow, like we're on the right track here. So long-term storytelling is a staple in AEW, and you see it with various talents, and a lot built around a lot of the title pictures and stuff like that, but a lot of personal rivalries, which you're seeing with Max and myself and Wardlow. That story is just as vital, and it's just as important, and it's up there with any other story we have going on, and pretty much anywhere going on in the wrestling world. So I'm a big fan of storytelling. I'm a big fan of long-term storytelling, and to be in one, especially ones that you can consistently sink your teeth into, there's nothing more exciting than that for me.
Yeah, and there can be certain like narrative components that pop up at like a later point too, like not tapped into right away. Like even with the Shawn Dean comparison that I was talking about earlier, just talking about that recent match, and then a couple years ago started the journey against you and everything like that. So even something like that I thought was interesting, and yeah, I mean definite callbacks you can do with different things like that and tell unique stories and whatnot, like how you got that W over Scorpio Sky and he's holding that TNT title now. So I mean, you never know, right?
Well, if you're able to kind of, and that's the thing, if you're able to kind of piece those things together along the way, if you're able to connect those dots or follow those breadcrumbs, then great. Then we are able to do a callback, or we're able to go in a multitude of directions in order to give you guys the best possible show we can. So if someone like you, who obviously is a queer wrestling fan who watches religiously, like most of our audience in AEW, they should be able to follow those things. And if they're able to follow them through the stories that we've been trying to tell, then yes, then we are doing our job right. And hopefully we're giving you the best possible show we can. So yeah, you're 100% right.
And I'm curious about this because a lot of the social media interaction, like people are wondering if there's like a particular like match or moment that you're most proud of, but just kind of the tone I'm getting from talking to you, it would seem like your mentality is more like that moment is still to come. Like, are you able to, I guess, have a moment that you compartmentalize as like, oh yeah, that was like a moment I'm especially proud of, or a match that went off exactly as I would have liked? Or is it more that mindset of like that moment is still yet to come?
It depends, I guess, and I don't mean that as in a bad way. And I feel personally, for me, I've had a lot of very cool moments. And again, this is coming from a kid who grew up in St. Catharines, Ontario, who didn't think that, he would be in the top, top percentile of wrestlers that are working for major companies. So, I mean, I had some great times in NXT. One thing that stands out is a match I had with Bobby Roode in Toronto at TakeOver. At the end of that match, you have somewhere between 15 and 20,000 Canadians kind of giving you a standing ovation, and that stands with me because my family was in the front row. My mother got to see that, so that was huge for me. In AEW, being a part of the first ever Blood and Guts, being in there with, Max, FTR, some of my closest buddies in wrestling, and going to war with a legend like Jericho and his guys, it's just, there's not many firsts left in professional wrestling, so being a part of that was huge. Stadium Stampede, again, a very cool, unique moment to be a part of. Wrestling Jericho on worldwide TV and doing a great number, I grew up watching that guy. First WWE show I went to was in Toronto. I was sitting in the crowd, and it was him versus. It was a live event. It was him versus Stone Cold for the World Championship, and I in the main event. And we fast forward 19 years later, and you're wrestling this guy, and that stuff to me is wild, and it hits such a emotional. It pulls on such an emotional string that it's almost you got to kind of pinch yourself a little bit. I thought I had a banger of a match against Sammy Guevara. I think it was in Houston last year sometime. Like there's been a lot of great moments, a lot of fun moments. But for me personally, there's still one or two things left to accomplish. So I think the moment, these ones I'll carry with me forever. But the main one, I still think there's something to accomplish. I'm still in great shape. I feel good. I still take care of myself very well. And, if you paid attention to any of the matches I've been doing the last little while, I can still go. And I can still go with anybody on any roster today. So there's one or two things left, but for the most part, those are probably the things that pop into my mind most as being some of the most important moments to me.
Yeah, and you talk about being able to go in the ring, and I think the moveset is very much there, but I think there's a certain economy of effort in there, just in the sense of what you do is able to get a maximized kind of response. Is that a conscious, methodical kind of thing that you apply to your approach as a wrestler and everything?
No wasted movement. Not everything I do or anything I attempt to do in the ring means something, whether it's a punch, a kick, moving towards an opponent. Everything, to me, in order to fully tell the story I'm looking to tell, everything I do has to matter. It has to mean something. Otherwise, what are we doing? We're just throwing things away or doing things for the sake of doing them. I'm not exactly the most flashy wrestler. I can do the springboards and I can do all that kind of stuff. I don't, because a lot of other people do. So how can I maximize my minutes with maybe an emotional reaction or a facial expression or a camera shot? I look for moments within a match as opposed to moves. That's just how I operate. And many will disagree, and that's your flavor of wrestling, and that is wonderful. You don't have to watch. But that is what I believe maximizes the story, is those key moments and those emotional moments, and hopefully those emotional moments are connecting with an audience. So, yes, everything is kind of broken down in terms of how I, put things together for a match. Everything is put together with a sense that it has to matter. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that level of insight there. And I also love earlier you were shouting out the various, NXT kind of appearances and Toronto and things of that nature. But I'm kind of curious, you mentioned the Bobby Roode match. Were you able to get in the quintessential date night with Grandma at the Mandarin, or did the travel schedule not align with that?
Oh, no, it didn't align with that night. But not long after, I think we ended up making up for it when we swung through St. Catharines. But Toronto was a little too far away. But we ended up making up for it, I assure you.
Yeah, because I think I was checking out an interview with Denise Salcedo, and you were saying you'd been to the St. Kitts and the Toronto locations there. And just, we were talking before about the multitude of times you've been to Oshawa. Do you ever get a chance to check out the Oshawa location of the Mandarin? That was kind of a staple for my family.
I have not been. I've been back home a couple times recently, but it's only been in the Niagara region, so I haven't ventured out. I used to live and spend time in London, Kitchener, and that surrounding area as well. I have not been out to the Oshawa area in years, so I'm long overdue. And hopefully, when everything opens up fully, I will be able to get back. And if there is a Mandarin in Oshawa, which I did not know, yeah, that is definitely on the list, man. Definitely on the list.
I was kind of bummed when you were saying that's not readily available in America. Is there another place you go to that supplements the experience to a degree, or is it just kind of not the same?
I haven't looked because it's not the same. And that's not to say that there are no fantastic places. I'm also a pretty good homebody. So I kind of set up my house so that I never really have to leave it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then when I travel, I'm in a city for a night and then I'm out the next day. So there's not a lot of chance get to explore. I'm sure if I did actually go out and explore and venture out into some of these different incredible restaurants that are all over the United States, I'm sure I would find something. But the Mandarin, especially because it has that connection with my grandmother, that's just our thing. The Mandarin, for that reason alone, is going to be top notch in my book. So.
Yeah, as someone who's been to the Mandarin more than a few times with his grandparents, I marked out when you shouted that out.
Hell yeah.
But you've been really great with your time, Shawn, and I really appreciate all the insights, but I do want to be mindful of what I presume is a busy schedule and all that. So to that point, is there anything you might want to add as a parting thought as we're wrapping up here, man?
No, I appreciate the time, man, and I hope some of your Canadian listeners check this out. And if they do hear this, just know, Canada, I miss you. I'm pulling for you. I'm rooting for you. And hopefully we'll be able to get back to see you guys soon with AEW. If I get word or the second it is announced, I will make sure to let you guys know as well. But continually, based on some of your words that you said earlier, just very grateful for the continued support, especially from the North. It means a lot to me. It keeps me going in ways that you possibly couldn't imagine. So hopefully one day soon we'll be able to get to we'll get AEW up there to Canada. We'll be able to pay it back in spades. So, no, just thank you for listening, and thank you for being a supporter.
Yeah, that Canada foray will be an awesome moment whenever it happens. But in the here and now, can still check out your latest exploits on Dynamite and check out Rampage and everything like that and see what's going on with the Pinnacle. So, yeah, thanks again so much, man, to reiterate. Really cool getting to talk to you a little bit. And, yeah, just hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day too, man.
You as well. I appreciate the time, pal. Take care.